Look into a dog's eyes. Not just a quick glance. Look closely. What lies behind those eyes? A brain that only reacts to food, noise, and commands? Or somewhere inside, an individual looking back at you? An individual who knows who you are, knows who it is, and perhaps knows that it exists. This isn't just an interesting question about animals, because if animals truly knew they were alive, knew pain, fear, remember and experience loss, then many of the things humans do to them would no longer be simply natural occurrences. It would become a moral issue that we have deliberately ignored for thousands of years. For decades, scientists have used a famous experiment to test animals' self-awareness. It's the mirror test. A colored mark is secretly placed on the animal's body, in a location it can't see directly. Then it's placed in front of a mirror. If the animal looks into the mirror and then touches the mark on its own body with its hand or foot, it shows it understands something very special. The image in the mirror isn't another animal. It's itself. Chimpanzees have done it. Orangutans have done it. Dolphins, elephants, and some birds have also shown similar reactions. But dogs usually fail. Cats fail too. Most animals look into the mirror and bark, growl, threaten, or walk away. And for a long time, humans looked at the results and quickly concluded they don't recognize themselves. But wait, perhaps the animal wasn't the problem. Perhaps the test was the problem. Humans rely heavily on sight. We recognize our faces in photos. We look in mirrors. We judge the world by shape, color, and movement. But dogs don't live in the same world as we do. A dog's world is built primarily on smell. A tree is just a tree to you. But to a dog, that tree can contain an invisible diary. Which animal just passed by? Which one was male or female? Which one was strong or weak? Which direction did it go? And how long has it been gone? So why would we use a mirror to test the identity of a species that lives by smell? It's like asking humans to identify themselves only by their heartbeat, and then concluding that those who don't recognize themselves are unconscious. When researchers replaced the mirror with smell, the results began to change. Dogs are shown to smell their own scent, the scent of another dog, and an altered version of that scent. They spend more time examining the altered version of the scent. In other words, the dog seems to recognize, this is my scent. But something's not right. If this is accurate, dogs may not recognize their own faces, but they recognize their tracks in the world, and sometimes they know very well who they are. It's just that they don't respond in the language humans want to hear. Self-awareness is one thing. Knowing that you exist is another. An animal can recognize its own scent. It can protect its body. It can find food when hungry and flee when in danger. But does it know that it is thinking? Does it know when it is certain and when it is not? That ability is called metacognition. Simply put, it is the ability to think about one's own thoughts. Right now, you are not just hearing these words. You are aware that you are hearing. You can recognize that you are concentrating. You can also recognize that your mind has just wandered elsewhere. It is a very special level of awareness. And for a long time, humans assumed that only they possessed it. But animal experiments are undermining that belief. In some memory tests, monkeys might choose easy questions when they're unsure and difficult questions when they're confident. Mice might refuse to take a test if they feel their chances of answering correctly are too low. Pigeons might indicate they don't remember. Dolphins might hesitate before a difficult choice in a way very similar to humans when they're unsure. Understand this correctly. They're not just answering the question. They seem to be assessing their own level of certainty before acting. They know when they know, and perhaps they also know when they don't know. It's no longer a simple reflex. It's a sign of a creature monitoring its own mental state. This is where things get unsettling. We can measure a dog's heartbeat. We can observe a monkey's brain. We can record a whale's call. We can analyze thousands of behaviors. But we cannot directly enter into their experience. We don't know what it feels like to see the world through a bird's eyes. We don't know what it feels like to navigate space using an echolocation system like a bat. We don't know what the ocean looks like in a whale's mind. Humans often make a very arrogant mistake. Anything that doesn't behave like us is considered non-existent. An animal that doesn't cry like a human, we say it doesn't grieve. It doesn't speak our language, we say it doesn't think. It doesn't pass a test, we conclude it doesn't perceive. That's not science. It is about putting oneself at the center and forcing all life into the mold of humanity. In 2018, an orca named Tahlequah lost her calf shortly after birth. But she didn't abandon the carcass. She lifted the calf's body by its head and continued swimming. Not for a few minutes, not for a few hours, but for 17 days, over 1,000 miles of ocean. When Tahlequah was exhausted, other members of the pod took turns helping to lift the calf's body. This behavior didn't help them find more food. It didn't protect the pod from predators. It didn't provide a clear survival advantage. It was just something humans understand all too well. Grief. A mother who knows her child was once here, and now it's gone. You might say it's just instinct. But instinct is sometimes just a word humans use to mask things they can't explain. If a mother embraces her deceased child, we call it love and grief. If an animal does the same, we reduce it to a biological reflex. Why? Simply because it can't stand in front of the camera and say, "I'm in pain." Perhaps we asked the wrong question from the start. The question shouldn't have been, do animals have consciousness? Because that question makes us think consciousness is like a switch, either on or off, or yes or no. But evolution rarely works in such a sudden way. Eyes don't appear fully in just one generation. Lungs don't just appear out of nowhere. The ability to remember, communicate, and build social relationships also develops gradually. So why should consciousness be the exception? Perhaps consciousness is a very broad spectrum. At one end is the ability to feel pain and pleasure. Next is memory, individual recognition. Knowing one belongs to a group. Knowing one is lacking information, self-awareness, planning for the future, and reflecting on one's own existence. Humans may be very far down that spectrum, but that doesn't mean the rest of life is at zero. Science may not yet be able to prove whether a dog lying on a couch is questioning the meaning of life. But we do know that animals can feel pain. They can feel fear, they can remember, they can bond, they can recognize other individuals, they can assess uncertainty, and at least in some species, they can recognize themselves. So the biggest question is no longer, are they like humans? But how much like humans do they need to be to deserve our kindness? Does a creature necessarily have to solve math problems, look in a mirror, or use language to be exempt from torture? Does it need to understand death like a philosopher to be allowed to fear death? Does it need to cry like us for its pain to count? This is the part humans often avoid. Because acknowledging that animals have inner lives means we must re-examine how we keep, use, buy, and consume them. It's much easier to say, they don't know anything. It helps us sleep soundly. But a convenient statement doesn't automatically become the truth. Next time you look into an animal's eyes, remember you're not looking at an object. You're looking at the result of millions of years of evolution. A body that knows pain. A brain that knows how to learn. A creature with memories, relationships, and its own way of perceiving the world. It may not think like you. It may not know it exists in the way you do. But the differences don't prove that it's completely empty inside. Perhaps the scariest question isn't, do animals know they're alive? But if they do, why did it take humans so long to realize it? Do you think animals are truly self-aware? Leave your thoughts in the comments. And next time an animal looks you straight in the eyes, don't assume there's no one home behind those eyes.